I remember the exact moment the weight settled on me, not just the momentary dread of an overdue bill, but a pervasive, physical heaviness that lived permanently in my chest. It felt like walking through thick mud every single day, trying to climb a financial hill that kept getting steeper, slicker, and utterly impossible. I worked relentlessly, sometimes holding down 2 jobs, sacrificing evenings and weekends, following every piece of conventional wisdom about budgeting and saving. Yet, despite my furious effort, the balance sheet never seemed to shift toward safety. Have you felt that? The utter frustration of doing everything right according to the world's rules, only to feel the constant, cold breath of scarcity on your neck. It's not just about the numbers, it's about the soul-crushing realization that your output doesn't match the input, leaving you exhausted, doubting your capability, and fundamentally questioning your place in the universe. For years, I was the hero of my own story who was utterly convinced he didn't deserve the quest's ultimate treasure. I watched others seemingly coast into comfort. They launched businesses that thrived, they invested with intuition, and they spoke about money with a casual confidence that was foreign to me. Meanwhile, I was trapped in a perpetual loop of panic and comparison. My greatest enemy wasn't the bank account balance, it was the insidious whisper repeating the toxic programming I had absorbed since childhood: money is scarce. Wealth is for others. You are not smart enough to handle abundance. This scarcity mindset wasn't merely an economic theory, it was a deeply ingrained, emotional operating system that controlled my decisions, my reactions, and my entire worldview. That constant struggle created a profound sense of isolation and guilt. I felt guilty for wanting more, guilty for not providing more, and guilty that I seemed to be failing at the very foundational promise of adulthood, financial stability. That guilt became a heavy, weighted cloak I wore everywhere. I would subconsciously self-sabotage opportunities, either by shrinking away from risk because I feared failure, or by accepting far less than my worth because the fear of rejection was louder than my inner confidence. My subconscious mind had become so adept at reinforcing lack that it actively filtered out any evidence of potential prosperity. But the most liberating discovery I ever made was realizing that this battle was not meant to be fought alone, nor was it meant to be fought using only the weapons the world provides. I recognized that my spiritual life and my financial reality were not separate entities, they were inextricably linked. The stagnation I experienced was a direct result of trying to solve a crisis of faith and mindset using only material effort. This realization introduced me to the ultimate guide in my life, a spiritual mentor I had overlooked in my desperation to control everything myself. I started to understand that God wasn't just an indifferent observer of my exhaustion. He wasn't sitting back, judging my failures. Instead, he was actively calling me to a higher form of engagement, a partnership where divine wisdom meets human strategy. The journey he guides us on is not merely about finding a new source of income, it's about achieving a profound mental overhaul. It's about dismantling that old system of limitation and installing a new, potent firmware built on the unwavering conviction that prosperity and abundance are intended for us, provided we align our minds and actions with principles of genuine creation and stewardship. This transformation involves learning how to see opportunities where before we only saw obstacles, how to hear the quiet counsel that steers us away from poor investments, and how to act with the courageous faith required to move from employee to owner, from debtor to investor. This path demands transparency, radical self-awareness, and a willingness to confront the ugly roots of our limiting beliefs. My promise to you is that by opening ourselves up to this guidance, we unlock the door to the life we were truly designed to live, a life defined by fulfillment, generosity, and genuine abundance, not perpetual lack. We must first, however, confront the inner battle that has kept us chained to the past. We must now dissect the very architecture of the internal prison we've constructed, the deeply etched patterns of self-sabotage that masquerade as caution or common sense. These patterns are not accidents. They are learned survival mechanisms that, ironically, end up preventing the very thriving they were designed to protect. Consider, for instance, the classic avoidance strategy: postponing difficult financial conversations or ignoring the growing pile of unopened statements. This isn't laziness, it's an emotional defense mechanism rooted in the fear that the truth will be too overwhelming. We prefer the vague anxiety of the unknown to the concrete pain of facing the numbers, yet this hesitation ensures we remain exactly where we are, perpetually reacting instead of strategically planning. Furthermore, many of us unconsciously adopt a victim mentality concerning wealth. We believe that financial success is primarily determined by external forces, the economy, luck, background, or connections, thereby absolving ourselves of the responsibility to create change. This belief system is insidious because it feels safe. If the system is rigged, then our lack of progress isn't our fault, making the discomfort easier to bear in the short term. However, this resignation is financially lethal. It cripples our initiative, making us resistant to learning new skills, networking actively, or negotiating assertively for higher value. The moment we surrender our agency, we forfeit the power to rewrite our financial destiny. Another pervasive trap involves the concept of proving our worth through sacrifice. We often cling to the notion that financial struggle equals moral fortitude, believing that true success must be arduous and painful. This cultural script teaches us that ease or swift success must be somehow morally suspect or undeserved. Consequently, when genuine opportunities for effortless alignment or significant profit present themselves, we often reject them immediately, citing them as too good to be true or unrealistic. This self-imposed hardship ensures that we perpetuate the cycle of overwork and undercompensation, validating the deeply held, but false, conviction that our value is tied to our suffering. Building upon this complex emotional landscape, we frequently encounter the phenomenon of financial ceiling. This occurs when, despite making significant strides, getting a raise, paying off debt, or successfully launching a side venture, we inevitably hit an invisible limit and slide back toward the familiar comfort zone of manageable struggle. This relapse is often triggered by an internal alarm system warning us that we are moving too far outside the learned parameters of our family's or community's financial reality. The subconscious mind, fearing the emotional consequences of standing out or being ostracized by success, orchestrates subtle behaviors, an impulsive purchase, a poor investment based on fleeting excitement, or a sudden period of stagnation, to restore the normal level of constraint. Identifying these destructive loops requires brutal, yet compassionate, self-inquiry. We must look beyond the surface actions and ask, what feeling is this behavior protecting me from? Is the refusal to delegate driven by a need for control stemming from past financial instability? Is the resistance to investing rooted in a fear of loss that mirrors an earlier experience of sudden deprivation? This deep excavation is the foundational work of transformation. Acknowledging the wound is the initial act of healing. It's imperative to recognize that these patterns, though currently limiting, were once resourceful attempts by a younger self to navigate a confusing or frightening world. The shift begins when we stop judging the patterns and start observing them as data points for reprogramming. We are invited to bring the light of awareness into these dusty corners of our psychology. This means interrupting the ingrained reaction, the moment we reach for the avoidance tactic or the moment the impulse to self-sabotage arises, and consciously choosing a new, empowering response. This is where the divine guidance becomes essential. It's not about finding a financial advisor, it's about connecting with the quiet voice of wisdom that offers the alternative narrative: you are worthy of ease. Abundance is your natural state. Let go of the need to earn your value through exhaustion. Understanding these core battles, the avoidance, the resignation, the romanticization of struggle, and the fear of success, prepares us to embrace the revolutionary mental shift that defines the next stage of our evolution. The shackles are not physical, they are intellectual and emotional, and only a renewed consciousness can break them. We must recognize these inner saboteurs before we can introduce the superior operating system designed for prosperity. The pivotal turn in my journey arrived not in a grand, public success, but in a quiet, humbling surrender. I had spent so long frantically rowing against the current, mistaking sheer effort for true progress. Exhausted, I finally laid down the oars. In that stillness, I understood that I had been operating on the wrong frequency, expecting terrestrial results from a spiritual discord. Imagine a powerful radio struggling to catch a specific station. The broadcast is omnipresent, but if the dial is even slightly off, all you receive is static and distortion. My entire being was tuned to the frequency of struggle, thus that was the only reality I could perceive. This realization wasn't about wishing the problems away, it was an act of internal realignment. It demanded that I completely redefine the source of my power. I stopped looking outside, to market trends, competitive pressures, or external validation, and started seeking the internal blueprint, the inherent wisdom that guides growth in every natural system. I recognized that genuine, lasting prosperity is less about what you do and infinitely more about who you are being while you do it. The strength I needed wasn't muscle, it was mental plasticity and spiritual receptivity. This deep inner authority is the new engine for advancement. The subsequent shift in perception was startlingly immediate. When I tuned into this higher resonance, the world didn't physically change, but my vision of it entirely transformed. Before, every interaction was viewed through a lens of potential loss or scarcity. Now, I began seeing patterns of opportunity woven into the mundane fabric of daily life. It was like suddenly putting on specialized glasses that revealed hidden pathways within a dense forest. Where I once saw an intimidating competitor, I now recognized a potential collaborator. Where I saw an insurmountable obstacle, I identified a cleverly disguised challenge designed specifically to stretch my capability and unlock a superior skill set. Furthermore, this illumination brought forth a new quality of action, something far superior to the grinding effort I had previously embraced. I call this inspired traction. It involves a profound internal knowing that precedes the external movement. Instead of haphazardly throwing effort at every possible venture, I learned to wait for the clear, often counterintuitive, nudge that guided me toward precisely the right contact, the right time, or the right conversation. These actions often required significantly less physical exertion but yielded geometrically greater results because they were aligned with divine timing and principle. For instance, the prompt might not be to launch a massive, expensive campaign, but simply to call one specific person I hadn't thought of in years, a call that unexpectedly opened the door to a partnership that redefined my career trajectory overnight. Consequently, my entire dialogue about money changed. I moved away from the language of debt and deprivation toward the expansive lexicon of creative stewardship and investment. This was not mere semantics, it was an acknowledgement that I was a conduit for resources, not an endpoint. My focus shifted from hoarding and securing what little I had, to strategically utilizing resources with an awareness that the source was inexhaustible. If I managed the current flow with wisdom and generosity, the channel would naturally expand. This perspective liberates us from the anxiety of holding on too tightly, allowing us to operate from a posture of confident deployment. This newfound strength is predicated on a fundamental change in identity. I shed the old label of financial struggler or one who must strive and claimed my rightful identity as a resourceful creator and steward. This is the core of the shift, realizing that you are not defined by your balance sheet or your past setbacks. Your value is intrinsic, derived from your connection to the ultimate source of abundance. Embracing this truth gives you the courage to make decisions that look utterly insane to the scarcity-minded world, decisions such as investing in professional development during a recession or setting radically higher standards for your worth and time. This mental liberation is the true wellspring of enduring prosperity, moving us from feeling victimized by circumstance to becoming the architects of a flourishing future. This clarity, then, naturally leads us toward the practical strategies required to solidify this transformation. The journey from clarity to sustained creation demands more than just a renewed perspective, it requires the installation of practical, daily tools and habits that anchor the awakened mind to reality. This is where faith and meticulous strategy become inseparable allies. We move beyond wishful thinking and engage in what I term intentional architecture, the methodical building of a prosperous life, brick by brick, guided by spiritual intelligence. Courage here is not the absence of discomfort, it is the willingness to feel the fear, the deep, cold pang of risk, and act anyway, knowing that stagnation is a far greater threat than failure. This is the moment to confront those projects or opportunities that have been shelved indefinitely because they required a leap of faith too wide for your former, constrained self. I'm speaking of submitting the proposal for the higher value client, terminating the low-profit venture that consumes too much bandwidth, or investing in the mentorship that feels terrifyingly expensive but promises to accelerate your growth trajectory by years. These are the choices that signal to the universe, and more importantly, to your own psyche, that the old limits have been officially dissolved. Personal responsibility, in this context, means dissolving the final vestiges of blame. We must permanently stop attributing our current circumstances to past injustices, systemic hurdles, or the limitations of others. While external factors exist, the courageous person understands that they, and they alone, are the chief architect of their response, their strategy, and their momentum. This powerful acceptance transforms obstacles from debilitating barriers into manageable design problems. When you fully own your results, the good and the bad, you gain complete control over the input required for future success. This is a profound shift from being a spectator in your life to becoming the committed, primary player. Crucially, this bold movement forward must be fueled by an absolute faith in progress, not perfection. Many brilliant ideas die at the hands of analysis paralysis because we wait for the perfect market conditions, the perfect skill set, or the perfect time. Courage demands that we embrace the concept of minimum viable action, taking the smallest, simplest step toward the goal right now, accepting that the process will be iterative, messy, and fundamentally educational. Every small action, whether it succeeds or fails in its immediate goal, builds momentum and refines the internal GPS, providing invaluable data for the next move. We must replace the desire for flawlessness with a commitment to consistent forward motion. I remember facing a major decision to liquidate a significant portion of my comfortable, though underperforming, investments to fund a completely unknown, high-potential venture. Every conventional voice, both internal and external, screamed caution and fear of loss. But the quiet guidance, the internal resonance I had cultivated, urged me toward the move, not recklessly, but strategically. The courage was in signing the paperwork while my hands shook. That moment was not just a financial decision, it was a spiritual declaration that my trust in the future, guided by higher wisdom, outweighed my attachment to current perceived safety. That move initiated a period of explosive growth that would never have been possible had I remained paralyzed by indecision. Therefore, I invite you now to look at your landscape and identify one area where you have been hoarding resources, time, money, or potential, out of fear. What is the single most courageous decision you could make in the next 7 days that definitively separates your new identity from your old constraints? This step requires boldness. It means letting go of the need for external validation or the approval of those still operating from scarcity. Trust your own internal architecture. Your potential is vast, but it lies inert until you activate it through courageous, faith-driven action. This stage is not about achieving the ultimate result, but about decisively initiating the momentum that will make that result inevitable. This is the ultimate test of faith, demonstrating through action that you genuinely believe in the abundance you claim. The momentum gained here prepares us for the final, empowering declaration of our transformed identity. The journey culminates not in the accumulation of wealth, but in the permanent establishment of a transformed identity, a state of being where abundance is the default setting, not a fleeting reward. This is the final empowerment, the moment we move beyond mere action and fully embody the truth of our inherent worthiness and creative power. You are no longer the one seeking prosperity, you are the one expressing it. This declaration begins with an internal covenant: I am not defined by debt, lack, or past mistakes. I am defined by the infinite capacity for learning, growth, and contribution that flows through me. This is the profound difference between chasing money and magnetizing it. When your self-perception shifts from needy to resourceful, your energy output changes, and the opportunities, people, and resources required for expansion naturally gravitate toward you. This is the magnetic field of the sovereign self, fully aligned with its divine purpose. Healing is the necessary partner to this declaration. Many people achieve financial success while remaining emotionally broken, creating a brittle and unsustainable prosperity. True empowerment means recognizing that the emotional scars from past financial traumas, the guilt, the shame, the stress, must be actively dismantled. We must forgive ourselves for the mistakes made when we didn't know better and extend compassion to the self who struggled under the heavy cloak of scarcity. This forgiveness is critical because it releases the energetic attachment to the past, allowing the full force of the new, abundant future to flood into the present moment. Your inner narrative must become one of grace, strength, and complete wholeness, irrespective of the current market fluctuations. Furthermore, this final stage involves embracing the role of the generous steward. The purpose of this transformation is not solely personal comfort, but exponential impact. When you operate from a place of deep, undeniable abundance, your primary concern shifts from "how much can I get" to "how much good can I create?" Your transformed financial life becomes a tool for elevating others, supporting causes, mentoring those on the path behind you, and circulating wealth back into the world in meaningful, sustainable ways. This outward expression of abundance reinforces the internal truth that the source is limitless, solidifying your prosperous identity beyond all doubt. Therefore, rise now into this new identity. Stand tall in the awareness that the wisdom required for your next financial breakthrough resides within you, accessible through faith, clarity, and intentional practice. Embrace the courage to make decisions that honor your expansive potential. You have been given the map, the tools, and the unwavering guidance. Let the constant search for enough finally dissolve, replaced by the calm, resolute knowing that you are enough, and that everything required for your flourishing life is already in motion. Walk forward, not with the hurried desperation of the striving worker, but with the composed confidence of the master builder. You are the hero who completed the transformation. Now, go live the abundant life you were always meant to lead. The universe is waiting to witness your greatness. Go forth and shine. I remember the morning I recognized the transformation was complete. It wasn't signaled by a wire transfer or a sudden public victory, rather, it was the cessation of an ancient, persistent static in my nervous system. I woke up, and for the first time in memory, the background hum of anxiety, the low-level dread about what if, was utterly silent. This feeling was the true inheritance, a foundation of peace more valuable than any asset. I had previously defined success by the acquisition of external tokens. Now, I recognized prosperity as an unshakable internal climate. I ceased being someone who merely visits the possibility of abundance and became someone who resides there permanently, operating from an entirely different dimension of confidence and creative ease. Furthermore, embodying this new identity meant confronting the weight of generational history, not just my own past struggles. I realized my personal freedom was a pivot point for my lineage. When I shifted, I didn't just break my own cycle of panic and constraint, I retroactively wrote a new financial script for the generations preceding me and proactively created an entirely different inheritance for those who follow. My children will not inherit the constant, low-frequency anxiety about money that defined my early life. They will inherit a blueprint of deliberate creation, confident stewardship, and effortless giving. This, my friends, is arguably the deepest victory of all, transforming a legacy of limitation into a heritage of limitless expansion. Now, consider the sheer gravity of standing as the one who decided, the struggle ends with me. This profound realization doesn't exempt us from challenges, it simply equips us with entirely new faculties to navigate them. I witnessed this resilience tested dramatically when, just 6 months into my expansion phase, a major unforeseen market retraction threatened to erode a significant portion of my momentum. The old me would have immediately reverted to catastrophic thinking, panic selling assets, and withdrawing into a defensive posture. The new self, however, reacted with surprising calm. I consulted the calibrated inner guidance, not for rescue, but for direction. Within days, what the scarcity-minded world perceived as a financial disaster, I recognized as a strategic realignment, a sharp and necessary pivot point that revealed a weakness in my portfolio I hadn't seen during the easy times. This unwavering stability under pressure is the definitive proof that the shift is integrated, the fear response is permanently muted, replaced by calculated, faith-filled wisdom. Another crucial layer is recognizing that maintaining this elevated state requires conscious energy management, much like maintaining the delicate mechanism of a precision timepiece. You are no longer just working for money, you are tending to your frequency. This involves intentional rituals that protect the inner climate, meticulously curating the information you consume, deliberately choosing associations that nourish your expansive outlook, and setting hard boundaries against any energy, whether gossip, complaint, or competitive angst, that attempts to pull you back into the lower vibrations of scarcity. This conscious self-care is not a luxury, it is the fundamental infrastructure that sustains magnetic prosperity. When we treat our inner environment as sacred, the external world responds in kind, reflecting back the grace and order we cultivate within. Consequently, my relationship with the concept of work itself has undergone a magnificent transformation. The striving has dissolved, now there is only flow. My efforts are concentrated on the highest leverage activities, those actions that create massive value and align perfectly with my unique genius. I learned that sustained prosperity thrives when it feels like play, purpose, and profound contribution, not grinding labor. This is the elegance of abundance. When we dedicate ourselves fully to what we are uniquely designed to do, the universe provides the necessary resources without the need for force or emotional exhaustion. We become conduits of creativity, and wealth, as a natural byproduct of that flow, simply accompanies the value we deliver. I leave you now with the benediction of complete confidence. You have done the deep work. You have confronted the shadows, claimed the tools, and demonstrated the courage. Look ahead, not with the trepidation of someone hoping for change, but with the settled certainty of someone who has already achieved it. Trust every calibrated intuition, every inspired nudge. Step into the arena of your life knowing you are fully equipped, not just to survive, but to expand, create, and give generously from an overflowing cup. The path is clear, and the guidance is constant. Go forth and shine, knowing your worth is absolute, your potential is infinite, and your abundance is already secured. Reflecting on this expansive journey so far, I see not a series of distinct lessons, but a beautifully complex convergence of energy and intention. We began buried under the ruins of old expectations, sifting through the debris of inherited fears and limiting self-definitions. Now, we stand at a profoundly different vantage point entirely. Picture an ancient sundial. Previously, our shadow was cast wildly and inaccurately by external light sources, the harsh glare of societal pressure, the faint, flickering light of comparison. But through the rigorous work of self-reclamation, we have stabilized the gnomon, aligning its core perfectly with our true magnetic north. The shadows still fall, yes, but they now tell an accurate, reliable time, reflecting a deeper, internal truth rather than merely reacting to the chaotic pulse of external markets or opinions. What emerges from this synthesis is a quiet, powerful authority, not arrogance, but an earned certainty that permeates every decision. We discovered that when inner alignment is prioritized, the external effort required for true creation miraculously diminishes. It's the profound difference between forcing a rusty gear to turn and simply lubricating a perfectly engineered mechanism built for flow. Where once lay brute struggle and the desperate need for validation, there now resides intelligent deployment of energy. This new stability allows us to engage with opportunities, risks, and challenges not as potential threats to our security, but as inevitable, welcome expansions of our capacity. We no longer negotiate from a position of insufficiency, we operate from an intrinsic understanding of our value, making every exchange a genuine balance of power, not a subtle plea for acknowledgement. I feel this transformation deeply within my own framework. My mind, once a congested highway of worry and hypothetical catastrophe, has become a clear, open channel. This clarity acts as an exquisite filter, instantly distinguishing between necessary, inspired movement and wasteful, fear-driven thrashing. It is a state of perpetual readiness, yet also one of profound rest. We have systematically dismantled the psychological fences that kept our abundance penned in, and we rebuilt our cognitive landscape, transforming the desolate terrain of doubt into fertile ground for innovative thought and strategic action. This structural integrity means that when the inevitable tests arrive, when the universe demands that we prove our new level of trust, we respond from a place of unshakable truth, rather than reverting to outdated panic modes. Everything we have navigated, from the smallest daily ritual of presence to the most terrifying leap of faith, converges at this single, magnificent point, the absolute, non-negotiable claim of our identity as the resourceful creators we were always meant to be. This convergence is the final act of internal sovereignty. It is the crucial moment when the abstract blueprint transforms into the tangible edifice, standing solid against any external pressure. We are now prepared, having gathered all the necessary tools and cemented our foundation, to make the ultimate declaration, a final, resounding statement that encapsulates the freedom, peace, and permanent flow waiting for us. I feel the gravity and the promise of that final realization, knowing that everything up until this point has simply been preparation for this crowning moment of embodied truth, the undeniable recognition of our ultimate worth. I recall a recent morning, the air still cool and silent before the sun broke fully over the horizon. I was sitting at my kitchen table, the familiar scent of dark roast coffee filling the quiet space. It was a scene identical to countless mornings years ago, yet the internal experience was profoundly altered. Where panic once clawed at my stomach, demanding a frantic review of spreadsheets and outstanding bills, there was only the gentle, persistent hum of certainty. I realized then that my journey was not about winning a battle against external forces, it was about achieving this very peace, the quiet knowing that I was permanently safe, not because of what was in my bank account, but because of what was solidified within my character. This deep settlement is what I wish most for you to claim. It is the final jewel of this transformation. We chased success for so long, believing the finish line was a specific net worth or freedom from a specific debt. But that was a misdirection. The true prize was not wealth itself, but the recovery of our innate creative power. We learned to stop trying to wrestle money into existence and started operating as the magnets for what we deserved. The abundance we now experience isn't temporary luck, it is a meticulously engineered consequence of spiritual alignment meeting strategic, intelligent action. We replaced the ragged anxiety of scarcity with the smooth, unwavering current of flow. My greatest revelation came when I understood the meaning of true stewardship. It wasn't about possessing assets, it was about becoming an efficient, powerful channel for resources to move through me, benefiting me, my family, and the wider world. When I let go of the fearful clutching, the idea that if I give, I lose, and embraced the principle of open circulation, I watched, astonished, as every investment, every offering of my time and expertise, returned amplified. This practice broke the psychological spell of limitation forever. The old hero, the one who saw money as hard-won grains of sand, was replaced by the wise architect who sees wealth as an endlessly renewable resource, provided only by our sustained connection to the source of all creativity. Look at your life now. You have done the excavation. You have replaced the foundation of sand with bedrock of unshakable truth. The most powerful choice you can make today is to fully inhabit this transformed identity. Stop allowing residual doubt a seat at your table. Every thought that pulls you back toward worry is a ghost of a past life, a voice you no longer need to heed. Your actions, guided by inner counsel, must consistently affirm this new reality. When you negotiate, when you invest, when you decide how to spend your precious energy, do so from a stance of authority and inherent value. I want to leave you with a final, empowering image. You are not standing at the foot of a mountain, looking up in exhaustion. You are standing on the summit. The struggle to get here forged you into the resilient, insightful leader you are today. The view from this peak is breathtaking, not because of the material goods visible, but because of the vast, open horizon of possibility stretching out before you. There are no more ceilings, only new vistas of contribution and creation. This peace you have cultivated is your greatest asset, guard it fiercely, for it is source of all the prosperous actions you will take moving forward. Walk forth today, not seeking validation, but radiating competence. Your journey toward infinite abundance is not beginning, it is perpetually unfolding. Go forth and live the undeniable truth of your magnificent design.